Welcome, dear friends. My name is Jakaš Kapin, and this is our second ever Instagram Live titled In Conversation. So as always, we also invite you to share your comments live and add your voice to the conversation. And of course, I also invite you to join us on our website at thewellvocal.com, where you can create your profile if you haven't done so yet, and enter our members portal with our global map, event listing, and a lot more that is coming up from the Well. So today we're chatting to Shay Nichols, and I will just see if she is ready to join us. And in the meantime, I just wanted to say that, hopefully this Instagram Live series is going to now return every single week with different guests. We're going to try and announce the next guests in the next couple of days. Usually it will be on Wednesday evenings for Central European time, but it might differ from week to week. So we're going to do another invite for Shay and see if she's ready to join us. I hope you have been enjoying all the content that has been posted recently. There's a lot more changes coming this autumn, especially to our website, especially to our event section, and we hope to add a lot more resources for you. Here we are. I think Shay is joining us right now. Hello, dear
Hi.
Shay.
Hi, Yaka.
So nice to have you here. So this is our second in-live conversation. I know we're trying to do it maybe in more of a non-verbal singing style. So I will let you introduce where you are, how you are in this moment.
Through singing, huh?
I guess
Okay,
so.
sure. Um, hmm. Mm, Bit of a
Na
mix.
ha ha hu hu, na saia daisy, na saia ya 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 sita ta ya 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 ya. Here we go. We are in the ether. And now maybe just a little bit of an introduction. So I think you are in New Orleans, Louisiana, right, at the moment, in your
I
home.
am.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're based. You're also the founder of the Wild and Sacred Voice School. You're also working currently on an album called Lullabies for the Earth. And we have named this conversation Voice in Nature, which is quite a broad topic. So I think I'll just let you begin maybe with how it started. I'm really going to invite also everyone to join your profile, to visit your page on Instagram. I think we actually started this by me saying that I just love what you post and how you talk about singing, how you talk about improvisation. So maybe my starting point is really when did it begin, this singing in nature? I know it's over 20 years, but how would you phrase the initial impetus behind it?
Hmm. Right. I think origin stories are interesting. So, there's three moments that I'll tell you about. I was in the forest of Transylvania at something called the Minimum Party, and there was a French improviser named Montanaro and multi-instrumentalist. And then he was going to lead a music workshop for the week. and found out that none of us were instrumentalists. And he was like, oh no, we're going to have to sing. And so one of the things that he did with us is singing in the river. So we were like playing the rocks and singing with the water. And there's something about that that felt really natural and right. And then I'm going to bring this other thing in because there's something about singing in nature and healing that's just so integral to me. I don't think I can separate them. But at the end of that workshop, he had us hold hands and the sun was setting. And he said, we're going to tone for people who died in World War II. And I had never toned before. I had never harmonized with people in that way. And there was just this, I don't know how to explain it, energy, the rightness of it, the grief of it, the honoring of it. And I also felt like, oh, wow, I think this is my purpose. And so then there was that realization. And then about a year later, I met Rhiannon, who we all love, Rhiannon.
Yes.
I took my very first workshop on Cortes Island, which is this magical place in British Columbia. And at the end of the 5 days, and I can't remember the name of that workshop. We'll have to ask her. But she was doing an advanced workshop, like singing in land. And, you know, I'd only studied with her for 5 days, and I begged them. I was like, please let me do the advanced workshop, please. And they did. And that was also a beginning, because I can remember the things that we sang to. Like there was this enormous root system of a tree that had fallen, and we all sang to that, like 18 of us. So I think that was the beginning. And then I love nature, so I just kind of ran with it.
Yeah, this is also another thing we talked about, which is where do we sing from, which can be actually something really useful to singers, improvisers. Where are they singing from? And you mentioning singing on behalf or singing as dedication. Maybe you can just speak to how that might help someone that is maybe in their head thinking about other things, or thinking about, you know, their themselves and their voice in a quite a broad sense, how this can open up new possibilities.
Yeah. So I think so. There's something about nature, and I mean, I'll just say it, you know, about climate disruption, right? Like none of us really know what to do. It's overwhelming. And there's a lot of conversation that's about, like, about nature. And so what I love about singing to nature is there's no about. You connect with whatever it is, the river, the tree, the flower, the bee. You sing to it, and in that process, you're with it, which is a different state of mind. Like it's almost like instant connection. And I kind of joke around and say, like, you know, nature doesn't speak English or other languages. That's a whole other question. But there's something that, you know, just going to tones, textures, rhythm, and connecting with nature that way, like, I think there's a humility in it. There's a meeting nature where it is.
And how has that developed for you over time? Because I know you've been doing it for a long time, you do a lot of solo singing as well in nature. So how has it changed? The perception, the practice, the experience?
That's a big question. Let's see. Well, when I decided to create my first improvised album, I was in Northern California, and I was really taken with wildflowers and taken with flower essences. And so I just spent a lot of time walking. And, you know, that I think that's what maybe has evolved, is that when I first wanted to make music that was connected to nature, I realized that often I wouldn't actually sing on my walks. I would listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think listen in all ways, right? So listen with my ears, with my eyes, with my senses, with the feeling tone. And then, um, and then after those walks, I would create. So it's almost like I got an infusion of deep listening, and then I would see like what moved through me after that. So that's how it started. And then I think that it changed a little bit as I was teaching groups or leading Singing the Land in groups. And there was something about us all singing to the land together that was really powerful. I like, it feels like it just opens the door to connect to nature in a different way because people are so used to connecting through the visual. And so it opens up another kind of way.
So it sounds like, yeah, that slowing down at the beginning is really important. I would say I've noticed this too, that if you just start thinking with straight away in your perception, maybe you're actually not quite ready to listen fully. And first, you need to dedicate that time to listen only. And then over time, it's going to reveal itself if it is a practice that you know, return to. I think
I like that.
especially,
Go ahead.
especially because I think we are sometimes so overwhelmed by all the data and all the things that we intake. So it actually takes us a long time to tune in with maybe the pulse of nature around us, which is usually a lot slower than we are, at least for me. I usually operate at a much faster pace, so it takes some time to slow down at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning.
Yeah, what I like about what you're saying is that I think it's really any so it's with nature, it's even singing with like just how we did at the beginning of this conversation. I think that listening, right? So if it's nature, just yeah, just taking a moment to just listen and be before you offer anything. And the same thing if you're having a conversation with someone or you're about to sing a duet with someone, which is a little scary sometimes and hard. Um, but that's why I love doing mini solos in the beginning because it's like, oh, I want to hear where you are in song, and then I'll share that, and then maybe we can do something together.
So like a check-in. Yeah, I also want to ask you about this visceral, direct form of connection that singing is, even while we're online. And I think most people would say that, yes, they're just waiting to do the real deal, to be, you know, in person with someone. But I think, especially here at the Well, we want to promote different ways of also connecting online. And I think we both believe that this true connection through singing is possible, even while just listening to someone else on Zoom. How would you describe why that is, or you know, what is needed for that to happen in this online setting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'll give you an example and then maybe the words will
Yes.
come. But okay, so I think lullabies are a universal language. Everyone seems to understand that. And so like right now, if I sang a lullaby to you or the people that are here now, I don't know, it would be okay, so if I step out and like track what it is that I was doing, I was connecting with my heart and my intention to offer just a little bit of rest, a little bit of soothing for wherever you are. And then that intention, I always say like intention plus sound equals healing. So the intention is carried by the sound. So that's what's happening in me, like say in a Zoom setting. But as a listener, especially if you got these little earbuds in, this is so intimate. Your voice is in my head. What a trip. I mean, that's, you know, that's music too, but it's so intimate. So that's what I find fascinating about Zoom singing is that, okay, yes, there can be issues with lag and, you know, rhythm and things like that. But to actually hear people in your head is quite intimate and quite connecting and can be a bit of a balance to the problems, you know, with lag. And also the higher speed internet you have, the more harmonies can happen. So I've experienced that. I don't know if you have.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And I think it's so different to the content we're used to. You know, if we go on social media, most content is extremely loud, you know, by volume and by the visuals of it. So actually, this idea of two people sitting on Zoom and just listening to each other is a very different way of communicating, even for the online world. And I have really experienced that that feels like a totally different setup than other ways of engaging online. Much more spacious and actually does allow for this intimacy. So maybe just a little invitation that it is worth trying again. I know we are in a post or in between pandemic time, but there is still space, you know, to call someone and to sing with them or just listen to them, even if you're not in physical proximity.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say that I mean this can be Zoom or not, but I have a couple friends that I call and basically we take 20 minutes and we just go back and forth singing. And I swear, like I get more information about how they are and also how our relationship is changing how they are in those 20 minutes than if I talk to them for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's all kinds of creative ways to write, to use Zoom. It's more like the Zoom singing, there's a little bit more of filling in the gaps. So it's like you almost have to go like a little bit more of an experimental mindset. Like it might not totally line up, but it lines up enough so that it feels connecting.
Which is also a good practice for the imperfections, you know, of the music that we create or the relationships that we have, because they're not always going to align in a perfectly harmonious way anyways. They might be
Mm-hmm.
jaggedy or slightly out of time, as life often
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say that uh, I have a shared experience of when I sing and improvise, it's quite an intense activity. And you say that you sing as if your life depends on it, or at least that was your response to someone asking, you know, what is happening for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just expand for people that are not used to improvising or new to it. What does that mean to you? Singing as if your life depends on it.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot in there. So if I ask someone to improvise who's never improvised before, most likely the first reaction I'm going to get is, you know, they might even go, oh, you know, they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. That's embarrassing. Oh no, you're just asking me to show my soul to you. Or there's so like we know the voice is connected to vulnerability and intimacy. So the vulnerability of it is the power of it. So what I would say, I mean, it's really more like just start singing, like any note. Um, the the minute you've thought about what note you're gonna sing, and you've already lost the point. Kind of. It's really it's faster than thought, and the whole point is to be surprised about what comes out of you. I don't know if that answered your question. You can further,
It does.
you
It
can
does.
ask
It also
again.
reminds me of, for me at least in my experience, how hard sometimes I have to work not to think and to be surprised, which is a whole separate. I might have, you know, different parts of my voice practice, and some of it might be theoretical or technical. Or for some people, you know, that could be a bigger chunk of what they've experienced. So it's sometimes a real practice of exiting the thought process and being surprised by your own singing, finding ways at being surprised, which goes back to what we talked about before about it might be that dedicating your singing helps or being outside helps or just a number of different strategies so that you actually
Right.
can be surprised and exist in the space of unknowing. I think that is still a faraway experience for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that in. So I think what singing as if your life depends on it, like means to me is mm, like connecting with your heart, connecting with what is essential. If you only had like 3 minutes, what would you say? That kind of thing. And not being scared by that intensity. Like there's something very clarifying about that. And I think that when it first dawned on me that I was doing that, um, I was in a performance setting and they were asking me to improvise. And I had improvised, like 4 times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared, and there was a bunch of people and they were handing me a microphone. And I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? And the only way that I could do it was to connect it to something larger. So I started singing a prayer for somebody in my family. And when I did that, yeah, then the mind, it went away. Any ideas about what I was doing went away because it had a purpose.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that this also reminds me of you saying that when sound or singing match an emotion, they help to release it, and that connects to a resource underneath the emotion. So if you can go straight there or to an emotion, that can help in any situation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes I say, I mean, I use different metaphors, but sometimes I say like, just let the water run clear. So in other words, whatever emotion you're starting with, if it's anxiety or grief or anger or confusion, just the act of singing that, it will change. And we don't always know what it's going to change into, but I do trust that it changes into something that has resource and power and energy.
And it almost reminds me that it might exist in a different place on the spectrum of, between wanting to be free while singing or these notions of free improvisation. It feels like actually it's not quite there. It's actually a very clear, defined focus and intensity rather than focusing on being free. Is that also part of your thinking when you improvise? The notion of
Well,
freedom?
yeah, freedom. Um, yeah, emotional freedom, I think. As you were speaking, I really noticed like I was like, oh, I'm really tuning into my heart when I sing. And yeah, and tuning into almost like the viscerality of it, the primal nature of it. And
Hmm.
going full on into that because I think that I just get exhausted from our minds and that it's at a certain point it's just not so interesting.
So there's this idea of this internal focus that is quite intense and that goes like pierces, to a deeper place. So maybe my next question is really about collaborating. So
Mm.
collaborating with this approach, maybe mentioning the elements, the ensemble, and the way you build intimacy, because I think for some people they might say, oh, if this is my, focus internally, going deep into my emotion, am I still then able to connect outwards, collaborate with others? How does that work?
Oh, right. Yeah. How does collaborating? Yeah. Okay. Well, of course, it depends on your collaborators and what they're really interested in and how they like to enter in. Because I think collaboration is always a synergy of different needs and approaches, right? But you mentioned the elements, which was my vocal improv group with Bryony and Green and Christopher and Sam. But in that process, I really felt like I was working with this idea of intimacy leads to good singing. And what I mean by that is that, we could have spent hours practicing skills or, harmonizing together that. But what I wanted us to do is sing lullabies to each other. I wanted us to witness solos and all our messiness and angst and pain. Um, I wanted us to offer support to each other. And so, and I noticed that whenever we did that, like whenever we had like a larger purpose to our singing just, I don't know, it rose to the occasion and none of us really knew how it was happening. It's like it followed this pathway. And then I think over time, the trust I had with them, the music came from that trust. Okay, and so I think that I always say that like it's about a relaxation. There's something about if you trust who you're singing with, then you become more relaxed, and then it frees up, and then the creativity starts flowing. So that's part of what I think about collaborating. But I think connecting it, this is something I do one-on-one with my private clients, but now I'm thinking, actually, this is what I do in groups too. It needs to feel good. So like, let's start with some forms that we like, you know, whatever it is, whether it's like sometimes like toning, like just being in the harmonic landscape feels really good, or, doing like pattern type of things like building block. I don't know. Or, one of my favorite forms is we sort of created this little formation, the supported solo. So somebody starts singing for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. This is if you're in person. And then the others get behind them and offer support, but they offer musical support, right? Could be harmonic, could be rhythmic. That's really fun. I mean, I don't know. We all loved that. So I think that collaborating is like finding out like what really feels good and nourishing and do that.
Yeah, and maybe also going back to singing now by ourselves, I think that a lot of people are really looking for buddies because they feel like singing by themselves is maybe not enough, or that it's really harder to be relational when we're by ourselves. It seems that, when we have at least one other person and we really connect and we are relational, things just flow. And maybe when we are ourselves, there are other things in the way. So are there any things that come to mind to aid that process, to support ourselves when we're trying to build this also as an individual practice, although I believe that we're never singing by ourselves in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
But if it seems like we're singing by ourselves, what would you say to that?
Yeah, like it would almost depend on where maybe. Like I might have different ideas if you're in nature, if in your kitchen or, whatever. But
Maybe let's focus on nature,
nature,
since that was
yeah,
our like
yeah,
through line.
it's true. Nature, I would start with something really simple and really small. So just mm, just a couple minutes of humming, and then you can allow as much space as you want, so that you don't have to think about doing anything wildly creative or clever or anything. Just hum to the tree. And then at a certain point, you'll probably want to change the note. Go ahead. Or you might want to do a little melody. So that's one idea. And then the other way is like just to create like a tiny little pattern. And again, like you can pick a pattern with a lot of space, or you could just repeat it, but just like again, you just do it and then see. But you never know. Like a bird might start, or a cricket might start, or you might want to change it. But I think just something like really tiny. That, that's what I would. Because as soon as like even when I just did that, even that like tiny little like all of a sudden I went into a different space. I started hearing music. whereas before I wasn't.
And it also reminds me of this importance of leaving enough space. Even if we're singing by ourselves, we don't have to fill all the space. And if there is enough space, whatever is in the environment might have more more of a chance to collaborate with us.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a form that I do called sonic niche. So I borrowed this phrase from Bernie Krause, who records nature sounds. He's got a really extensive library. Um, but it's the idea that like a healthy ecosystem has all the different bands of frequency. Say you see it in like an orchestra, right, or symphony. Um, So sonic niche, it's a way that you can sing with like, say, 15 people that don't know each other, don't know anything about singing, like in nature. So everybody can just do something tiny with lots of space. So in other words, you can have like, dun, dee, dun, right? Just a lot of space. And there's something in that that like people start listening to what's around them. They will listen if a bird sounds at that time or a cricket sounds or the wind all of a sudden picks up. But you're right. It's the spaciousness. And and again, that's a humility. That's, humans taking a moment and not being dominant.
And then maybe onto singing as remembering, which might be
Mm,
another layer that in that spaciousness, there might be other things that appear. So singing as remembering, I feel like there's a lot of potential for what comes up if we allow for the space to exist. And maybe, yeah, also we can think about it in the context of the world right now, the political context in the United States, what is coming for all of our, ecosystems, the shared ecosystems, and why this is a practice for right now, maybe by ourselves or collectively. I know you've also done a lot of pieces that are going to converge in the album Lullabies for the Earth, for instance, Ocean Lullaby, which was created, I think, during Hurricane Ida, right, in 2021.
hmm.
So maybe just an opportunity to speak to singing as remembering in this broader context of what it can bring to our collective consciousness, if you will.
Yeah.
Or
There's a lot to
singing to
say.
that. Please go
Yeah.
ahead. There's all the space. Now is the time to say it.
Ooh, Lord. Okay. All right, maybe I will just for 10 seconds to see what I would say after that. Because singing is remembering. It's a big, even just saying that phrase, it's like, even if I say that, singing as remembering, it's like what starts to light up in you, right? Um, mm. Okay. Singing as remembering, sometimes it can be like a direct line to your ancestors. So as I was doing that, I was just feeling people behind me. I don't necessarily know who they are. I don't know how far back they are, um, but they're there. So there's something about. I mean, this gets into the mystical dimension. So, but there's something about singing opens up connection, and I think it can open up a pathway to the ancestors. And I mean, we don't know what's carried in our DNA. I think that memories, songs, dances, I think they might be in there. So there's something about singing that can wake that up. Um, Singing as remembering. There's also, it might awaken memories of you being sung to as a child and how good that felt. Or maybe singing as a child and how good that felt. Um, Maybe it might awaken memories of singing together with your community and how good that felt to be around a fire, I don't know, and like sipping hot chocolate and singing songs or dancing together. And I would say like in this collective moment, why it's important is because singing together, it's connection, it's direct, and it it bypasses a lot of notions about who you are or who you think you are or who we are together. You know, I'll just say this, like sometimes I'm not a big fan of the check-in in a circle. Sometimes I would love for us just to sing one note together. Because if I have 12 people and we sing one note together, or, you know, a couple or whatever, like there's a way that I know them more so than if they tell me their name and where they're from and what they think. It's a different kind of knowing.
I think that, yeah, our individual identities are very strong within a lot of us. So when someone is asked to introduce yourself or to say where you are, who you are, what you are, that might be the first thing that comes to mind if we use words. So I do agree that even just one collective note is a completely different thing. And while we said singing as remembering, I would also say singing is believing, which is actually a Sylvester quote, the queer icon from San Francisco, which is kind of the similar thing, really. Singing is believing. So while, you know, when singing, you are believing in something, which might be yourself or something else, but it is true. Maybe just to circle back to the Lullabies for the Earth, just an opportunity to say what that project means to you, what it is, what it represents, because that's the other part of, you know, doing this practice, sharing it with others, our collaborators, people that we might be teaching in groups. But then there's this other sphere of sending it out there, you know, into the world. What does that mean? What does that bring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this project, I think it started around, I don't even know now, maybe 8 years ago. I got my first artist residency at a studio in the woods in New Orleans. And I collaborated with a bird ecology professor. So we would go out on walks and he would tell me what he heard, what different birds he heard, and the communication that he was hearing. And then I would tell him what I felt from those bird sounds. But anyways, kind of the same idea. Like I would spend hours in nature and, you know, different musicians, and then would go back and just sing. And so this Lullabies for the Earth feels like a culmination of that. Like I didn't know what I was doing 8 years ago. I knew it was something, but I didn't know what it was. And so Lullabies for the Earth, it has 4 different sections. So water, birds, insects, trees. And one of the tracks is just a solo with a nature sound. Like there's a crickets one, for example. And then there's a multi-tracked one. So one of my favorite things to do is to go to the swamp. And then I have Loopy on my phone, which some of you might know. It's got the donuts. And so I just sit on this bench and then I just start doing the donuts, meaning like I just start creating harmonies. And then now what's cool about it is that because I do it outside, I'll get like a bird on one track. I'll get a frog on another one. I'll get a cricket on another one. And so part of it is taking those multi-tracked, rough draft improvisations and turning them into little pieces. And then there's also a collaborative aspect where, like Martin Mazakowski is a stand-up bass player, Green, singer, Gary, oud player, so different duets. But I think the larger idea is, connecting with nature in a nonverbal, musical way, a multi-layered way, and that maybe it will touch people or awaken people, because there's something about. I mean, I love music, I love songs, I love songwriting, I do. And songwriting is just not really where my gift lies. I like I like the nonverbal. I like, you know, music as language. But I think there's something about singing, you know, in a pure music, like without words, that again, like it's not about nature, right? There's something about it that has to like connect to like nature within and without in like a pure form. I think that's part of it too.
Thank you. Yeah, the way you started saying, going around the forest with a scientist or someone that knows about birds, I think maybe we need a lot of more of that in our ecosystemic thinking, having someone thinking about nature and then someone next to them feeling about nature and then both
Yeah,
of them feeling about nature and both of
yes.
them thinking about nature, just as a completely ongoing conversation.
Yes, I love. Yeah, that was the original idea, which I still thank you for bringing because I still want to explore that. It was Tom Sherry who was the ecology professor. But right, there's a mutual learning that happens, right? Because he might tell me something about that bird song. Oh, then I feel it in a different way. I might tell him something that I'm feeling from that bird song, and it might help him write a paper about it. So,
More of
yeah,
that, please.
yes, exactly.
So I think we're nearing towards the end of our conversation.
Okay.
I again really invite everyone to go to your page at Shay Nichols to visit the Wild and Sacred Voice School, right, in person, online, to check Lullabies for the Earth, your very beautiful content and music. And again, I will let you finish. Maybe I'm gonna start this time, do a little song, and then you're gonna be the last one to do the last song, and then we just say goodbye without saying goodbye and finish this live,
Love
and
it.
we'll see people next time. Okay. Goodbye.